Good morning. Good morning, everybody. I am Todd Obert, President and CEO of Productive Corporation. Joined alongside me here is with stethoscope, magnifying glass, and microscope, and hairnet, Mr. Pete Greco, our VP of Sales and Technology. Loves rocking the hairnet because it keeps his keyboard free of hair. So that's a hot tip that we'll give you. The other hot tips we're going to give you are around improving Office 365 security. If you have been to our events in the past, you know how we do it. We have less fluff and more relevant content. To that end, we'll meet Productive in 1 minute. Then we'll get right into Office 365 and what you can do to ensure you are securing it appropriately. We're going to talk a little bit about what the issues are in terms of common threats, and as promised, 3 tips, maybe more. I think pocket tip that he throws out, but we'll see. But as for now, let's meet Productive in 1 minute. So who is Productive, you say? Well, I appreciate you saying that, even though your microphone is muted. Productive Corporation provides security solutions for mid-sized companies. We have specialized expertise to answer licensing and technical questions so that you don't have to do that on your own. We also implement, test, and optimize the products that we sell. We do everything from the front-end security assessment, network health check, to configuring systems. We do Active Directory security services and help you make sure that your Active Directory is up to date and the security posture is strong, as well as basic configuration, UTM deployment, AV health check, etc. All of this in terms of what we produce for content. We do these fantastic half-an-hour webinars. We also produce a lot of content that is on our YouTube channel or productivecorp.com/content. The bottom line is we have the resources to help you, whether it's implementation, assessment, licensing, or optimization services. We are here to help. Help at productivecorp.com. If you're real old school, use the phone number 800-726-4099. We're here to help any way that we can, and one of the ways that we help is by putting on these educational web events. Our customer told us years ago that they like to see not only product technology stuff, but also relative to the technology in the mid-market space, what they can know and what they should know about security, security posture, and continually improving that posture. To that end, we came up with our Office 365 web event that we're doing today. We've been seeing and working with a lot of customers that have been have deployed Office 365 and are looking for ways, and sometimes have been surprised how unsecure their deployment was, not because they were negligent, but just because they assumed Microsoft would have made it a little bit more secure out of the box, which I think you'll find is not the case. So we're going to kick this off here, but I am going to launch a poll, and I wanted you guys to quickly respond in the next 15 seconds or so. The question is, are you using Office 365 for email? Quick response will give us those results, and that will be the start of it. As I'm finishing up, I want to introduce our presenter today, Mr. Pete Greco, who is our VP of Sales and Technology. He has been working with customers on security initiatives for, well, almost since the beginning of time, but for at least the past 15 years, and has worked with literally thousands of customers to help improve their security posture. So let's give a warm virtual round of applause to Mr. Pete Greco. Pete?
All right, thanks so much. Todd, if I can get, or I'm not sure if we need to wait for the poll to conclude before I can get a little control, but if I can get a little control, we'll keep this bad boy moving right along. Thanks so much, everybody, for hopping on with us today. Todd's kind of covered the agenda already. I'm going to try and keep my part here down below 30 minutes for sure. Hopefully keep it right around 20 minutes is my ultimate game, and get everybody off to lunch or the rest of their day. There are plenty of things to be reconfigured, reviewed, revamped, and all kinds of other fun things, starting with a re. So let's keep this. Yeah.
So I'll just let you know to kick it off. 62% of the attendees are using Office 365 for email. 20% are planning to roll it out in the next 6 months, and 20% are no, or 19%. So there you go.
Okay.
That'll give you kind of a good look.
Sounds good. So a lot of folks have done or getting ready to do what we have done in moving that email to the cloud, and really just a tremendous relief for me as we moved the Exchange server off-site. One of our concerns, and probably a lot of you folks had this same conversation internally, was what do we do if it's down? Microsoft or whatever email hoster may not be foolproof. Right now we can't control our uptime or control how updates get rolled out or this kind of stuff. And we quickly realized that giving up that control and knowing that when we had downtime, we actually had the good folks at Microsoft working on issues and working on uptime and trying to maintain availability, put us into a much better spot than we were in by doing it on our own. And if you're a real large organization, we do have a few customers out there where they have a dedicated head who does nothing but works on Exchange, does nothing but works on Active Directory, is just the switch person or just the firewall person. And if you can have that kind of role, well, that's awesome. And you have someone who can really spend time getting certifications, doing the additional things, staying up to date with changes and this kind of stuff. But if your role is a little bit similar to mine, that this is just one of the many things that you have to do during the day, it's hard to become the Exchange expert and know exactly what to do or where all your resources are when you have an issue. So we want to move that stuff up into the cloud, make sure that we've got that availability and accessibility, and that when there is an issue, I'm not pulling out my hair. And it was kind of funny, Todd talked about the hairnet earlier, and if you've ever seen my head, you know I don't need one. And part of the reason for that might have been Exchange related, right? So once you've gotten all your hair pulled out, it's finally time to get everything into the cloud before you go to work on the right on the skin. So some of the advantages, like we're talking about, getting that email offsite, letting somebody else be responsible for that, right? Not pulling your hair out when Exchange goes down, not doing what I used to do of holding my breath while I patched and rebooted the Exchange server. And our Exchange server took about 18 minutes to shut down and start up. So I would turn quite blue, hoping that everything was going to work and work correctly. Backing up, we're in the backup business, so for us that was actually somewhat easy. Restoring, the challenges there when we did have to restore was in the olden times finding a place to restore to. Virtualization has kind of removed some of those issues, but definitely something that we were happy to not have to worry about, right? And then outside of Exchange, and for us the Exchange was the biggest driver, but outside of that I think what a lot of folks like is having the latest versions of Office, being able to access your documents in the cloud, getting the end users to move documents into OneDrive instead of hosting them on your own file server, which then needs to be backed up and maintained. So it can also pose some challenges. Some of the biggest challenges that we've talked to folks about right up front are migration and deployment, getting it rolling, and then setup and configuration, getting that hybrid approach addressed if you want to make sure that your cloud account is connected with your internal Active Directory. Any organization of any size definitely wants to take that route, so poses some challenges. And then security. how are we making sure that everything is safe and secure? How are we keeping spam levels at an all-time low? What about email encryption? Lots of questions to ask there, right? And then from a user standpoint, we're enabling our users now to work from everywhere, right? And they're telling us that they want more access, and at a manager level or a business unit owner or a senior executive level, that's stuff that you want to hear. You want folks to be thinking about doing their job better, doing their job from the road, doing their job from home at night, so that they're staying competitive, staying at the cutting edge, right? And this is all great stuff. Part of the challenge, though, is users can be haphazard with information. The way that they treat their own information can be quite haphazard. I saw a great Facebook post the other night, and I'm not a huge Facebooker, but I saw a great Facebook post with somebody saying they thought they might have left the front door open to their house. They were wondering if somebody could go and check. I mean, you're publishing in a very public forum, right, that you've left your domain unsecure, your physical. And so if that's how they treat their personal information, you got to wonder how much thought are they putting into protecting their corporate data. And a lot of folks are not thinking about it at all. And that doesn't mean that they're malicious, right? And I'm certainly not trying to accuse them of that. They just don't understand how folks could gain access. You're already making them change their password all the time, so what the heck? How could something bad happen? They don't understand how connecting the office, the home, the cloud to cloud can create a situation where they now have multiple attack vectors where that data can be accessed or stolen, right? Now we're moving some of our stuff into OneDrive. Previously, as we were putting this stuff onto our file servers, we were hopefully doing a good job of maintaining permissions, doing reviews and audits, and making sure that folks only had access to the data that they should have access to. One of the big challenges internally, of course, is I've built this encrypted file share where we're going to keep certain kinds of data, certain kinds of documents, and I've got end users who save stuff to the wrong place or they save it locally, right? As it goes into OneDrive, part of our new challenge now is it's in their own OneDrive account. It's hard to control who are they sharing that data with. Are they sharing it with folks that they shouldn't be sharing it with? Are they monitoring the folders that they're sharing with their team? IT can a little bit be losing control over some of this stuff, and maybe that's intentional. You're taking some of the workload off of you and putting it onto the end users and giving them the capability to collaborate, but that data can also now be starting to get away from us, right? So security is still an issue. Even going to the cloud, that doesn't resolve security. And as you talk to a lot of cloud providers, and I'm not talking about folks who are providing cloud security or folks involved with cloud, maybe it's your sales rep from Salesforce or your sales rep from some other cloud-based organization. They may not have an understanding of security. They're just talking access, 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 ease of use, and they're not talking to IT, right? They're talking to business owners. So they're trying to get finance to think about this shadow IT type service. They're trying to get that VP of sales thinking about Salesforce.com or some other cloud-hosted CRM. They're trying to get that marketing person to be thinking about a Marketo or a HubSpot or one of these other cloud-based marketing automation platforms, right? Tons of these things out there that maybe are not at the forefront of figuring out how to make sure you're using it in a secure way or understanding what your secure issues are. So, a couple of those things are malware can still exist in the cloud, right? Hackers can penetrate the cloud. Infected data can be saved to the cloud. And a huge challenge with the cloud access products can be figuring out how to extend a least privileged access model to those cloud services. A lot of folks are talking about this as it pertains to their Active Directory and their internal network, but figuring out what you need to do versus what you can do can be a lot of work, especially when it's something that might be new to your organization, like Office 365. And depending on the Office version you have, you may or may not have access to security features such as DLP or some of the more advanced threat detection. And even if you do have the correct access, do those features actually fit your requirement? You know, to say that Microsoft has, sure, checks a box, right? Does it meet your requirement for anti-spam? Does it give you the configurability that you need? Is the detection good enough for you? We feel like it's not quite meet the previous on-prem levels that we had, so we want to have an external solution that really meets our need, more appropriately. Many of you have multiple cloud access points, which can include O365, Salesforce, an AWS strategy, tons and tons, Box, Dropbox, tons of other tools out there that your end users are taking advantage of with your involvement or taking advantage of without your involvement, right? And so how do you monitor these? Or are you taking advantage of CASB, Cloud Authorized Security Broker? And if this is something that you're investigating, part of the challenge here is the space is so new that it can be hard to identify what to look at to meet your needs. So a lot of research needs to go on to figure out, what do you already own, what's available to you, what do you need, right? And there's not a big website out there with a bunch of checkboxes to say, oh, here's the 7 cloud things that I'm using, here's the 2 products or the 8 products or the 1 product that meets my exact needs. So a lot of research and a lot of learning needs to go on. A little bit different from some of the legacy technologies like your gateway or your endpoint security, where folks who have been around a long time know these are the players. I'm not necessarily sure which one meets my exact needs, but I at least know who the legitimate and credible players are. I know who the long-term players are. I know who the stable folks are that I want to start investigating to keep my security up to the next, up to the next level here. So a little bit of challenge with really just understanding some of that stuff. Isn't it secure right out of the box? The easy answer to that is no. What we have seen a little bit is migration plans that included a security mindset, but got off track with budgeting. Right? So, for example, the whole plan was we want to take advantage of DLP and some of the advanced threat detection that's included in the E3 or E5 Office 365 plans, but maybe because of budget down the road we get a little bit off track and start acquiring E1 or Premium, and now we don't have some of those security features that we were planning up front and kind of forgot about it. Also run into some situations where folks did some mix and match licenses to give higher level users some of the access that they needed that includes some of those security features, but then other users, maybe they bought a lower level and a premium that did not have the DLP capability, did not have the email encryption, did not have some of the nice archiving capabilities, and now we're kind of trying to figure out, well, what settings can I set for what users, and it's creating a little bit of chaos of trying to figure that out and stay on top of that. And in the meantime, while you're doing this, you're still trying to keep your servers up and running, get patches out, answering weird end user questions that are coming up from the help desk that are getting escalated up to you, all kinds of fun stuff there, right? And then because of our busy days, we get stuff working with a plan to come back and investigate the configuration settings, right, in more detail, which never gets done. We never have the time to get there. And we see this so many times, right? You've inherited this environment. maybe your predecessor is not the one who made the move to Office 365. It was their predecessor, and there's been no continuity in being able to understand what was our thought process, why did we do this, where are the assets. Had a great conversation with a guy last week. Every question that we asked him really was, I think this, but I don't know for sure, still trying to get on top of that. They basically had kind of determined that they really didn't have an IT strategy. They'd done a lot of outsourcing, and the way that they had done it, there was really no continuity, so they finally brought in their own in-house IT team. I think it was 3 people, if I remember correctly. But they were figuring out the whole environment, about 280 laptops, workstations, and servers across 8 states, right, with no documentation or anything. So we do see that kind of thing. Not as drastic as that story, but we do see a lot of folks in that, in that situation. Go ahead, Todd.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's the bigger point we see with customers is that it's a paradigm shift, right? I mean, essentially, originally when people would buy Office or whatever, they would buy that thing for the functionality and not think about the security part and parcel. And
Right.
Now you really have to think about it because it's the way you're accessing it, how people are getting to it, and how you're potentially exposed. It has to be consistent, all the way through now.
Yeah, that's a great point. And even with on-prem Office installs, right, we still need to think about some security settings as far as, do I want those, and really setting up trust and this kind of stuff so that you're not throwing up a bunch of errors, but you're also not enabling your users to open infected docs that are sneaking through. But in-house, then, we're still controlling our UTM or gateway, right? We're controlling maybe our Tenable or Qualys network management. We're on top of our endpoint. We're still using our other tools, right, to secure, and we maybe haven't thought about acquiring these tools or figured out which tools we have working or have access to, or what's the quality of those tools. Because again, back to the anti-spam example, Microsoft has it built into Office 365, right? I feel like it's barely a checkbox feature, let alone a feature that we really want to rely and depend on, right? So that's some of the stuff that you gotta figure out. Okay. So we're going to keep it rolling right along. When bad things happen, that's actually Todd Obert right there on the weekend. That's what he does. He's got the ones and zeros all over him, and but he's checking his Facebook account. So this seems menacing, but really pretty benign, I would say. Right?
Yeah.
So a phishing attempt containing Cerber ransomware was delivered to an estimated 10 million subscribers, Office 365 subscribers, right? The email contained an audio file that explained the attack and requesting 1.4 Bitcoin, which at that time, and this was June of last year, folks, I probably should have said that, right, at that time was worth about $500 for the decryption key. The distributors of the Cerber ransomware were able to confirm that the virus was able to bypass the Office 365 built-in tools by using their own private mail account. Now, many of the tools that we provide for the gateway and endpoint security can stop this type of threat, from working internally. But if you're not scanning this traffic in and out of the cloud the way that we did it on-prem, right, there's a great risk to bypass those defenses and possibly spread these attacks to your clients, your vendors, your business partners, which is not what you want to do, obviously. And there's been some follow-ups from that original Cerberware. They came out with well, I don't think it was a second revision. It was a second revision of this Office 365 attack. And then Qt ransomware, and I'm not sure if it's pronounced Petya, P-E-T-Y-A, also released that we're specifically looking at Office 365. Right? So there are attacks out there. I think there hasn't been a lot of widespread news. So a lot of folks are not thinking about Office 365 security, and so they start talking to us and start talking to some others and start really feeling like, ooh, maybe we do need to tee up the game here. So what are some things that we can do? We got a couple of tips, and definitely would like to have some one-on-one conversations with anybody that is interesting, right? So let's get right into it. What can we do to be more secure? Tip number one, lock it down. Lock down the sharing and understand what and who can share. OneDrive is one of those things that you need to be figuring out, right? SharePoint in the cloud is one of those things that you need to be figuring out. And I read a great article, and I wish I could remember what the website is. They published their own mistake. They are an organization that actually helps build SharePoint servers both in Office 365 and on-prem. That's their business. They had identified that they basically published all of their own internal confidential information and provided wide open access on SharePoint site. They published what they did wrong, and what they did to fix it, I think as a way of showcasing their talents, but their main point was pretty easy to make a big mistake if you don't really know what you're doing when it comes to sharing and permission. So make sure you're on top of that, right? Tip number two, understand your licensing and what you've got. We got a little screenshot here to help point out, right? You've got a lot of different levels. Microsoft allows you to do a mix and match, so if you're throwing E3 or E5 at a couple of end users and then configuring DLP, that might not be applying to the folks that are running the Office Premium. That's still giving you the email, it's still giving you the downloaded versions of Office, OneDrive, SharePoint access, right, but no additional security. What security do you need? Do you require email encryption? Let's make sure that we're getting those features if that's a requirement for the business. And tip number three, review the default settings. We were actually pretty surprised as we were kind of doing some internal review, as we were launching this Office 365 security service that we're talking to a lot of folks about, that a lot of the defaults are wide open. And that's really been not just Microsoft, this isn't picking on Microsoft, but what a lot of developers do is they provide more access so that you're more likely to have success. If we actually sent out these new programs in a more locked down fashion, folks are going to have a hard time figuring out, why isn't this working? What's not working? Why can't I get access? Why can't I do this update? Why? Right? And that doesn't lead to people buying more of their product. So they're sending things out in a less configured, more open standpoint. The Office 365 Cloud is this same way. So things are going to be very easy for folks to do the things that they want to do. But when you're doing that, we're kind of spitting in the face of our good friend, right? So we need to be on top of modifying those user settings, at least reviewing them so we understand where we're at. Lots and lots and lots of Exchange settings and Azure settings, getting self-service password reset up and going, right? A lot of challenges there to review this stuff, make sure we're set, getting your DNS set up, migrating your mailboxes, right? Getting invites out to your end users. That's just the first step. There's a lot beyond that to get on top of for sure. So some good resources to know. Check out the Office 365 Admin Kit, right? The troubleshooting tools and diagnostics can be found at Microsoft or on TechNet rather. Pretty Googleable. I've found a ton of resources online that link back to Microsoft, so you know they're legit. This is stuff that we can definitely help you out with, and would love to engage with you. So if you're feeling like you're not on top of your Office 365, or you just simply don't have the time to crack open one of these books or pull up Google because you got so much other stuff going on, we'd love to chat with you and see if we can help you get your security to the next level.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'd like to add to that. I mean, right, it's having another set of eyes and having the ability to, work with somebody that has gone through it and said, have you considered this, right? I mean, part of it is architecting the solution on the front end, or talking through either having that document or having those policies, make sure that stays consistent, and then also going back and reviewing what you have going on. Because what I can tell you is there are tons of advantage from using Office 365, but there are some, real things to make sure you're on top of so you haven't inadvertently exposed yourself, too much, or, that your security posture is kind of weaker than you would like. So anyway, Pete, thank you so much. Really appreciate the time. Everybody who took the time to attend our event today, truly appreciate it. We know you have a lot of stuff going on, so the fact that you chose to spend 30 minutes with us is very much appreciated. Our account execs will reach out to you, see if you have any questions. We also will have this video posted on our YouTube channel, Productive Content, and we will take it from there. In the meantime, hopefully you guys have a fantastic day and week, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.